Good morning, fifth grade. This is Ms. Harvey, and we are going to do reading class together. It is Friday, April 17th. To be prepared for reading class today, you should have a couple of different things open. So you will need to have your Friday, April 17th reading packet open on your computer screen. You will also need to have open the quiz or exit ticket for Friday, April 17th reading class. And it looks like this. The last thing that you'll need to have is a scratch piece of paper and a writing utensil in order to jot down notes and to use that to track for main idea as you are reading your text, or to write your answers down before you input them into your exit ticket quiz. Pause the video here to grab those materials. So today is our last day of reading a text to identify main idea, and then working to see how smaller sections in the text connect to or contribute to the larger main idea of the text. So right now, I want you to turn and talk. As we are reading a text, in order to figure out the main idea, what should we be tracking for? Exactly. Whenever you're trying to figure out the main idea of an entire text, you should be tracking for what the topic of the text is, and then jotting down notes about what the author is teaching you about that topic. So I want you to take a look at today's text, and I want you to go ahead and preview it super quickly. What do you think the topic for today's text is? Right, the topic of today's text is about tigers. So tigers are the topic of the text that we're going to read today. And as you're reading it, you should be asking yourself and jotting down notes about what the author is teaching you about the topic. Right now, you're going to go ahead and independently read the entire text. And you're going to stop there and come back to the video when you're done reading the entire text and you've jotted down notes about what the author was teaching you about the text. Pause the video here to do that now. Okay, so you should be continuing this video only if you have already read the entire text and only if you have a scratch paper next to you that has notes that you've jotted down. Those notes should be responding to what the author was teaching you about our topic today in the text. That's the only way you'll be prepared to answer stop and jot number 1. So before we start talking about the text and the main idea, we're going to respond to stop and jot number 1. And we're going to respond to a potential main idea of the text. So the question says, Trisha says the main idea of the text is, tigers talk to each other by roaring all the time in order to survive. Your job is to figure out if you agree with this main idea, why or why not, and then you're going to type your response into the Google quiz. So right now, go ahead and answer stop and jot number 1 based on what you read and based on what you jot down. Do you agree that the main idea is tigers talk to each other by roaring all the time in order to survive? So now we're going to go ahead and respond to stop and jot number 1 together. First, I want to hear from somebody that agreed that the main idea of this text was tigers talk to each other by roaring all the time in order to survive. So in order for something to be the main idea of our entire text, it needs to be what the author was teaching us throughout the text about our topic. So I went back to the text in order to figure out where the author mentioned tigers roaring and the sounds that they make. I found that on page 5, there's a text feature that mentions 4 different ways that tigers speak. It says tigers make 4 main types of sounds. Each one expresses a different meaning. And then they showed us each of the different sounds and gave us a short description of what they were. And the next time that I saw it mentioned was in the section Call of the Wild, where it says one sound tigers use is a booming roar called a long call. It's incredibly loud, like 22 lawnmowers going at once. So based on the evidence that I just provided, could it be true that the main idea of our entire text is about how tigers roar in order to survive? So right now I want you to ask yourselves, do the two pieces of evidence that I just mentioned, number one, do they prove that main idea true? And number two, is that what the entire text was teaching us about tigers? So you should have come to the decision that Trisha was actually incorrect. This main idea does not actually connect back to the whole article. And even the sections that talk about tigers roaring do not prove her main idea correct. So her main idea is not connected to the entire text. Therefore, it's not possibly the main idea of the entire text because it wasn't what the author was trying to teach us in this text. And the fact that she mentioned actually wasn't really being proved in those sections that mention roaring. So Trisha's main idea is incorrect. Tigers do roar to communicate, but the article is not focused on that, and that is not what the author wanted to teach us about tigers in this text. So right now, before we continue on with the rest of the Stop and Jots, I want you to go ahead and make your own main idea for this text. Thinking about the notes that you jot down, connecting the topic to what the author was teaching us about the topic. What was the main idea of today's text? Go ahead and share the main idea that you just came up with. An example main idea for this text that connected both the topic of the text to what the author was trying to teach us throughout the entire text could have been that scientists track tigers' roars to track and protect them from being killed. This main idea connects back to the entire article and what the author was trying to teach us about tigers throughout the article. So as you can see, connecting back to the first Stop and Jot that we did, the main idea was somehow connected to tigers roaring, but it was not that tigers roared to communicate and survive. It was more about how scientists are tracking their roars in order to protect them and in order to track them. Next, you're going to go ahead and answer the two multiple choice questions that are Stop and Jots. Go ahead and read through those two multiple choice Stop and Jots and come back to the video when you're ready to discuss. Multiple choice question number 1 asks for the relationship between the two sections, tracking tigers and forest sounds. What should have been your first step in order to be prepared to answer this question? Exactly. You should have gone back to reread the two sections, tracking tigers and forest sounds. If I go back to the text, go ahead and quickly reread those sections before we continue to chat. To start, what was the point of the section tracking tigers? Exactly. The section tracking tigers was there to give background information of why cameras are being used. It lets us know that images are used to help identify tigers. So now we have to think to ourselves, how does that section connect to forest sounds? So forest sounds connects because it shares what the cameras are able to capture. It gives us the effect of what cameras can do because it helps them capture the sounds of the tigers in order for them to be identified. So now let's go back to the stop and jot to take a look at the answer choices. Which answer choice best matches what we just discussed? We said that forest sound shares the effects behind having cameras set up in forest. And in tracking tigers, the author helps to develop and explain how and why cameras are used and are placed. So the answer choice that best matches this would be D. Forest sounds shows the reader effects of the causes introduced in tracking tigers. In these two sections, no information is being compared or contrasted, so it could not be C. In addition, tracking tigers in forest sounds do not give the reader all of the supporting details to the main idea. Remember that we find the main idea using all of the information that was presented to us throughout the whole text. An answer choice that you may have picked is tracking tigers introduces a possible solution to the problem introduced in forest sounds. But in forest sounds, remember that the author's main point was to share what the cameras capture. So the author wasn't necessarily introducing a problem. And tracking tigers came before forest sounds. So it's out of order that the solution would have come before the problem. So this answer choice just doesn't make much sense. And it's also not connected to what is actually said in those sections. The correct answer here would be D. What did you think for multiple choice question number 2? Number 2 asked us, why does Ferliman say a tiger's voice is as unique as your own fingerprint in the section called To the Wild? Well, this question is asking us about a specific section. What should we do first in order to be best prepared to answer this question? Exactly, we should go back and reread the section Call to the Wild. In Call to the Wild, the text reads, tigers are solitary animals. When they're not mating or raising cubs, they live alone. To keep in touch with other tigers, they call over vast distances. One sound tigers use is a booming roar called a long call. It's incredibly loud, like 22 lawnmowers going at once, says biologist Emily Ferliman. Ferliman works at the Prustein Project. To study tiger calls, she collects recordings of tigers from zoos and sanctuaries across the US. She uses a computer program to create an image that represents each sound. This lets her see the qualities of a call, such as how loud or long it is. Each tiger call makes a different sound picture. Male tigers, for example, have deeper voices than females. Ferliman says scientists could use these differences to identify tigers. A tiger's voice is as unique as your own fingerprint, she says. First, let's think about the example that they gave. How are our fingerprints unique, or how do they make us unique? Well, our fingerprints make us unique because everyone doesn't have the same fingerprint as you. Everyone's fingerprints are different, and that's why they can be used to identify specifically you as a person, because your fingerprint will not match anybody else's. So, fingerprints are a way for humans to be identified. So, now let's think about why Furlman would have compared a tiger's voice to a fingerprint. Right. Well, in the text, it says that each tiger's call makes a different sound and a different sound picture. So that means that no two tigers are going to have the same picture or sound exactly the same. So, just the way that humans can be identified using their fingerprints, because everybody's fingerprints are unique or different, tigers can be identified using these sound pictures, because no two tiger calls or sound pictures will be exactly the same. The answer choice that matches the thinking we just did would be answer choice A. Furlman makes this comparison because she notices each tiger has its own sound, just as we have our own fingerprints. B would not be correct because people do not have the same fingerprints, and the text specifically said that each tiger's sound picture was a little bit different, so she was not trying to point out similarities between male tiger sounds. This section was not talking at all about tigers in Indonesia, so C would not be connected to the section Call to the Wild. And D talks about humans' sound, but again, the comparison was between human fingerprint and tiger sounds, not human sounds. So the correct answer choice here is A. So now that we have done our stop and jots together, we read the text, we had a discussion about those questions, and you guys came up with your independent main ideas, you're going to go ahead and do your exit tickets for reading class, where you answer questions independently. Today's secret code for reading class is vacation. 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 Make sure you're spelling it correctly and it's in all lowercase letters. You'll need that secret code in order to be able to answer the exit ticket questions. Make sure that when you're answering the exit ticket questions, that you're using the text to support your reasoning and your answer choices, keeping in mind our teaching point for today, that the sections in a text can be used to support the larger main idea of the text. After you finish your exit ticket, if you feel like you need a conference with your teacher on finding main idea and connecting it to sections within a text, go ahead and reach out to your teacher, since this is the last day of us being in this reading unit. So now would be a great time to get help from your teachers. So right now you should be on your exit ticket quiz. It should be asking you for a secret code, and once you correctly type in that secret code, you'll be able to take today's exit ticket quiz for reading class. Well, it was great teaching you guys reading today. I'll see you when I see you.